Okay, so hi guys. So congratulations on finishing your quiz. I'm so proud of you guys. You worked really hard on this first part of this chapter 4 area of polygons, and I'm sure that you guys did really great on the quiz. Thank you for working so hard. So today we're going to be continuing on in our chapter 4 area of polygons. Today we're going to be talking about how to find the area of trapezoids. And so if you don't know, this is a trapezoid right here. This image in blue is a trapezoid. And to find the area of a trapezoid, and this little key idea right here, to find the area of a trapezoid, it says that we have to do 1/2 of the height times the sum of its bases. So in a trapezoid, this is going to be a little bit different than what we've seen in parallelograms and triangles, and the fact that there are actually two bases. There is base 1 and base 2. So that's where it comes in with finding the sum of those bases as part of finding the area of a trapezoid. So in this little algebraic expression here, you can see 1/2 times height and then times base 1 plus base 2. So that's saying we're taking half of our height and we're multiplying it by the sum of our two bases. So let's try that in an example below. So in example 1, we have our first trapezoid here, and we have our two bases and our height. And remember, from finding the area of triangles and parallelograms, we learned that when we look for the height, we have to look for that perpendicular line. We want to look for this right angle, and that's how we know that we have the height. So in this case, our height is 6. So we are going to say that our area equals 1/2 of 6. I'm going to put 6 in parentheses just so that we don't get confused. And then we're going to multiply that by the sum of our two bases. And our bases here, we have 9 and 5. 9 and 5. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do 1/2 of our height, which is 6. So to figure out 1/2 of 6, you can do this two ways. You can simply just say, well, if I want to cut 6 in half, what would that be? So if you had, let's say you had 6 brownies and you cut those brownies in half, or you ate half of them, how many left would you have? Well, you would have 3. So you can say it that way, or if you wanted to write out the multiplication, you could do that as well. And that would just simply look like you would say 1/2 times 6. And to write 6 as a fraction, we know is going to be 6 over 1. And we know that 2 and 6 are both even numbers, so they're both divisible by 2. So we can cross cancel. We can say 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. Multiply straight across, and we're left with 3 over 1, or just 3. So you could do it either way. If you prefer to write this out and multiply it like we've done in the past, go for it. If you're comfortable with just saying what is 1/2 of 6, cut 6 in half is 3, you can do that as well. So whatever you feel comfortable with. So we found out that 1/2 of our height is 3, and we still need to multiply the sum of our bases. So the sum of our bases is 9 plus 5. 9 plus 5, which we know is 14. So now we're left with 3 times 14. And that equals 42. So if we have 14 times 3, 3 times 4 is 12, carry the 1. 3 times 3 is 1, 3 times 1 is 3, plus that 1 is 4. So left with 42 here. But I'm not done. I want to keep those units. So our units were in feet, so we have 42 feet squared. So left with 42 feet squared. All right. So I'm going to clear this off so we can try our next example here. All right, so in this case, our area is going to equal 1/2 of our height, which we know is 5 because we look for that perpendicular line, that 90-degree angle, which we see 5. And then we want to multiply that by the sum of our two bases, which in this case we have 8.5 plus 11.5. So first things first, I don't want to take 1/2 of 5 because I know that that's going to be a decimal. So the first thing that I'm going to do this time around is I'm going to add up my two bases. So 8.5 plus 11.5. And remember, whenever you're adding or subtracting decimals, you have to line up the decimal points. So I have 8.5 plus 11.5. Remember, when you're multiplying, you do not line up the decimals, but when you're adding and subtracting, you do. So I have 5 plus 5 is 10. Carry that 1. 8 plus 3 is 10. I'm sorry, 8 plus 2 is 10. And then I have 1 plus 1, which is 2. And whenever we add, we know that we just bring those decimal points right down. So we have 20. I'm going to go back over here. So I have 1/2 of my height of 5 times 20. And now I can go ahead and multiply this 5 and 20 because I know when I multiply 5 and 20, I'm going to get an even number. And that's going to be easier to cut in half than an odd number. And so 5 and 20 is really easy to multiply. We can just say 5 times 2 we know is 10. Add on this extra 0. So we have 100. And we still have to do 1/2 of this. So we know if we want to cut 100 in half, that's just going to be 50. And we, of course, don't want to forget about those units, so we have 50 meters squared. So the area for this trapezoid is 50 meters squared. All right, so let's move on. So these two, if you guys are feeling pretty confident, I'm gonna ask you guys to pause the video, try these two on your own, or maybe try one on your own, and then check your work back with me. If you're not feeling confident, that's totally fine. Just keep following along with me. Maybe pause it as we go to figure out some of the calculations on your own. Just whatever you feel most comfortable with. If you want to wait to pause it until I set up our little equation first, that's perfectly fine as well. So in this case, it looks a little bit different, but to find the height, we're still going to look for that perpendicular line, that 90-degree angle, and so we know that our 5 is right next to that perpendicular line, that 90-degree angle. So we can say that the area equals 1/2 of 5 times our sum of 8 plus 4. I'm sorry that those little boxes keep popping up. I'm trying a different application on my iPad, so for some reason these little boxes keep popping up, so I hope it's not too much of a distraction to you guys, and I'll try to figure out a different way to do that next time. Okay, so again, 1/2 of 5 is not going to be a whole number, so I'm going to go ahead and add this 8 and 4 first. So we have 1/2 of 5 plus 8 plus 4, which is 12. And if some of you know already off the top of your head, 5 times 12 is going to be a even number. 5 times 12 is actually 60, so we have 1/2 of 60, which is a lot easier than doing 1/2 of 5 times 12, which you could do if you wanted to. So if we cut 60 in half, or we multiply it out, whichever you want, but either way, if you cut 60 in half, you are left with 30. And again, we want to keep those units, so we have 30 millimeters squared. 30 millimeters squared. So I hope at this point you guys are feeling a little bit more confident with this, and maybe you'll try pausing the video now and try number 2 on your own. If you don't feel comfortable, if you don't feel confident yet, that's totally fine. Just keep following along with me. All right, so number 2. So let's see, our height area equals 1/2 of our height, which is 6, times the sum of our two bases. We have 7.7 plus 2.3. So in this case, you could start either way because 6 is an even number. So if you wanted to cut that 6 in half first, you totally could. Or if you wanted to add first, whatever your preference is. If you wanted to add the sums up. If you wanted to add, if you wanted to find the sum or add the two bases first, whatever you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and cut our height in half, which I know is going to be 3. And then I'm going to multiply by, I'm going to find this sum of our two bases. So again, when we're adding, we want to line up those decimal points. So 7.7 plus 2.3. So 7 plus 3 is 10. I'm going to carry that 1. And then 7 plus 2 plus 1, again, is going to be 10. Bring that on a decimal point, I'm left with 10. So I am left with 3 times 10, which we know is 30. I'm going to keep those units, inches squared. Inches squared. All right. So I hope that you guys are starting to feel a little bit more confident with these two problems.